Hello and welcome. I'm the Rambling Director, and today we're going to be talking about another version of the Picture of Dorian Gray. And no, I didn't film it the same day as the other one. That's why I took off my sweater so you wouldn't get suspicious. This version is from 1976, just 3 years after the version that we just finished watching and talking about. This one stars Peter Firth as Dorian Gray, John Gielgud, who, I'd be surprised if any of you haven't heard of John Gielgud. He's a great actor, as Henry Wotton, and finally one of my favorite actors, and I think one of the most underrated actors of the 70s and 80s, Jeremy Brett as Basil Hallward. Now, most of you who have ever heard the name Jeremy Brett are going to know him from two things. You're either going to know him as Freddie Eynsford Hill from My Fair Lady, or you're going to know him as Sherlock Holmes from the 1980s, 1990s Granada series of the Sherlock Holmes adventures, which was made to be an incredibly accurate, and it is an incredibly accurate telling of the short stories and novels by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's probably the most accurate, faithful production of Sherlock Holmes ever put on, and they got through a good deal of the stories before Brett eventually died in the mid-1990s. He plays here Basil Hallward, and again, I'm building him up a little bit because I think he is one of those actors that is profoundly underappreciated, and some people would say he's over the top, but I guess my question to you would be, what do you value in an actor? Because to me, I love it when an actor can get across the raw, sometimes hectic emotion of a character, and Jeremy Brett, more so than almost any other actor I've ever seen, gets across a sort of hectic quality that I really only have seen in Jeremy Irons, and to some degree in Kenneth Branagh, who's another one of my favorite actors. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on about Jeremy Brett, but I just wanted to mention that I think he is probably the best Basil Hallward ever. And this is the first version we've talked about so far that, yes, actually has some homosexual undertones to it. Now, I said before, it is actually pretty rare that you find any Dorian Grays that have that, and yet, funny enough, here it is, right in the middle of the 1970s. This one was made for, I believe this was part of the Play of the Month series that BBC had presented. And they actually did these a lot. Jeremy Brett was in another Play of the Month, which was a production of Love's Labour's Lost, one of my favorite Shakespeare comedies, in which he played Barone, the title character. Now, for those of you who don't know John Gielgud, I mean, he's played in just about everything. He was in one of the earlier versions of Murder on the Orient Express. He was in Gandhi. He was in The Elephant Man. The man was just in a ton of stuff. And he was also a huge actor on the stage. And for my money, he is one of the better Lord Henry Wottons. I really like the fact that this version, again, more so than most any other version to my mind, gets across the book. There's very little change to it. In fact, really, I don't even think there's much in the way of dialogue that wasn't directly lifted out of the book. This is a very straight, point-for-point adaptation. I can only think of two things, major things, that they changed. Well, now, when I say two things, one of the things is actually quite minor. It's a big and it's an important scene, and it's kind of mellowed out to a point that I think is... It's just a little too much. They should have left the scene more in its wholeness. It's when Basil Hallward is murdered. He really just comes in, looks at the painting, screams that copyrighted, trademarked Jeremy Brett scream, and I just love his screams. I know it's silly. It's a silly thing to praise in an actor, but his screams are fantastic. He has this very full-bodied chest voice scream. It's almost operatic.
Kneel! Dorian! Kneel! I told you, Basil, prayer comes too late.
And I really think that scene was very underwhelming. Basil, he always has that great line about, no, pray with me, Dorian, pray, the sin of your pride was answered, the sin of your repentance may be answered also, and I missed that line. I would have loved to have heard Jeremy Brett's interpretation of that scene. Peter Firth is a good Dorian Gray, and again, probably one of the best Dorian Grays. He captures the femininity, the sensitivity, the heartlessness, not so much. Whenever he and Sybil Vane are having their argument and he's telling Sybil that he doesn't love her anymore, he doesn't come across as cruel, he comes across as pouty.
You are ill. When you're ill, you shouldn't go on. You make yourself ridiculous. My friends were bored. I was bored. I loved you because you were a marvelous thing. Because you seemed to give substance to all things I'd ever dreamed of. You have thrown that away. You are shallow. You are stupid. My God, what could I have been thinking of? You are a nothing. I'll never see you again. I'll never think of you. I'll even forget your name. I only wish I'd never laid eyes on you. I would have made you famous, splendid, magnificent. You'd have been worshipped by everyone, and my name would have been on you. What are you now? A third-rate actress with a pretty face.
He's too much of a pansy. He needs to be crueler. Now, I understand that you could interpret the lines from the book in that way, but to me, it just... The lines in the book could be read with complete, utter cruelty to them, and Peter Firth does not do that. Where Peter Firth gets it absolutely perfect is that feminine way of behaving. He's very flamboyant. When he walks, he doesn't just walk or oh, somebody knocked at the door, I'm going to run and get it. He doesn't run and get it. He goes, whoo, like, he kind of floats over there, and I really enjoy that. Shane Bryant really, I think, was probably a better Dorian Gray. He captured that femininity and that sort of flamboyance, but he did it in a way that when he's heartless and cruel, he seems psychopathically heartless and cruel. And it's not the writing, it's the way he acts the scenes. Again, there's something almost uncanny about him. And Peter Firth is a good actor. I've seen him some other things, and he does a great job as Dorian Gray in certain parts. And then there's other parts where I just don't believe it. And when he kills Basil Hallward, I utterly do not believe it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Judi Bowker playing Sybil Vane, and Sybil is more underplayed, just like she is in the book. But aside from giving a great performance, Judi Bowker, I think, is one of the most beautiful women who has ever lived on God's earth, and certainly one of the most beautiful women ever to play Sybil Vane. Angela Lansbury, Rachel Hurd Wood, I think is her name, from the 2009 version, and Judi Bowker from this version are the three most beautiful and innocent Sybil Vanes. They're the three that I think actually really come in all tied three-way tie for my favorite Sybil Vane. Where this movie really shines is how accurate it is. I don't even need to talk about it that long because it's just the book. Again, there's only a couple things majorly changed. And so instead of chatting your ear off about it, I'm just going to let you go and watch it. But I will give you one criticism before I leave, and that criticism is this. The painting is really underplayed. Whereas in the best versions, you get a sense of the painting and the paranoia about the painting, even when the painting is not being shown. In this version, the painting is shown twice, and both times, the way it's filmed and everything is pretty underwhelming. The final reveal is especially bad. Dorian's just an old man. There's nothing particularly ugly about him. And although the original painting is, I think, probably the best painting of Dorian Gray ever, next to the Henrique Medina painting for the 1945 film, beyond that, the painting was a huge element of disappointment. Another criticism that I'm sure many of you who have seen this will have about it is that besides the painting just not looking all that intimidating when we see it in its final transition, is also that the emotional response of Dorian to the painting, it's really almost as though the painting doesn't really matter that much to him. I mean, the first time he sees the painting is changed, yeah, I mean, he looks a little panicked, but he immediately goes into trying to help the situation, mitigate the damage that could be done by it. And something that I think most versions of Dorian Gray get right, even the bad ones, is just, the reaction, the fact that this is not an everyday occurrence that somebody finds, the painting of them aging, and changing. So I feel like this version really skims over the picture in the Picture of Dorian Gray. But that's really all I've got to say about it. Go and check it out. It's on YouTube for free, and just watch an incredibly faithful version of the Picture of Dorian Gray. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.